Welcome to TV on TV. I'm State Representative Tommy Vitolo. You're watching Brookline Interactive Group. Today is Thursday, February 20th, and we have a great show for you today. We have Brookline High School senior Toby Sillman, who is a member of the Brookline School Committee's Climate and Sustainability Task Force. Now, we're going to talk about climate and sustainability with him at the Brookline Public Schools, but first, as always, we'll start with the news. The United States Senate Republicans plan to bring a budget reconciliation bill to the floor tonight that will contain a large part of President Trump's agenda. The bill will include policies related to the border, energy, and defense. Secretary of State Marco Rubio met with top Russian officials over the weekend to discuss an end to the war in Ukraine and reestablish high-level diplomatic relations. Over the weekend, the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, fired more than 14,000 employees, on top of the 75,000 who opted for the buyout offer. These layoffs hit most departments, including the Interior, Veterans Affairs, Health and Human Services, and more. Massachusetts vaccination rates have dropped below the U.S. average for COVID-19 and influenza. You can find COVID and flu vaccination clinic details on the town's webpage or at your local CVS or Walgreens. Governor Maura Healey has directed the Department of Public Utilities to rethink the recent gas rate hikes, as residents have seen large spikes in their bills over the past month. The JFK Library and Museum closed abruptly on Tuesday when staff received notice of job cuts from the federal government. The museum is reopened and will continue to operate with a smaller staff. Brookline's Select Board voted to advance a major reconstruction of Washington Street Tuesday night. The project will add elevated bike lanes and improve sidewalks and intersections from Beacon Street to Brookline Village. Construction is not set to begin until 2027. According to a study conducted by the CDC, Brookline High Schoolers surveyed have shown a decrease in high-risk mental health crises. A three-story apartment building at 50 Vernon Street partially collapsed in Brookline over the weekend. It was vacant and under construction. No one was injured during the collapse. The cause of the collapse remains under investigation. Folks, that's the news. Stay tuned on the flip side for my pre-recorded interview with Toby Sillman, a fascinating look at climate and sustainability within the Brookline Public Schools. Stay tuned. And welcome back to TV on TV. I'm State Representative Tommy Vitolo, and as promised, we have an outstanding guest today. We have Toby Sillman. He's a senior from Brookline High School. Toby, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, as you can imagine, more of my guests are older than you than are younger than you, which means your answer to the next question may be a little shorter than most. The first question I ask all my guests is, what have you been doing your whole life?
So I moved to Brookline about 5 years ago from Brooklyn, New York City. And I'd say for the past year or two in my high school career, I've spent a lot of time advocating for sustainability, particularly with regard to transportation. I'm a co-leader of the BHS Climate and Food Justice Club, and I'm also a member of the Brookline Bicycle Advisory Committee. So biking is something that's very important to me.
You're a senior at Brookline High. You're co-leader of the Climate and Food Justice Club at Brookline High School, and apparently you hang out at the studios at Brookline Interactive Group.
That's right. I was lucky enough to spend last summer working with people at Big to produce and direct a video about sustainability initiatives in the public schools of Brookline. So
we're going to show this video. It's about 10 minutes long. We're going to show the video in just a few minutes, but give us a taste. Like, don't tell us what was in the video, but how did you come to decide what the world needs from Toby Sillman is 10 minutes of good stuff on public schools of Brookline sustainability? How did you come to that idea, that decision?
I would say a lot of that was just bit continuing off of my experience advocating for sustainability. I've also been part of the sustainability task force, which is what essentially connected me to many of these initiatives. And through all the many interviews that I was able to incorporate into this video, I I was really inspired by the stories that these people brought to the table about what they've been doing to make Brookline a more sustainable place. And my goal was just to highlight that in the best possible light because it's something that a lot of people need to see.
Well, let's actually, I want to get into it. I know we just introduced you, but I really, I'm excited to see the video. I know other people are as well. So what we're going to do now, folks, a little unusual for the show, we're going to take a break and go right into Toby Sillman's video. And that runs about 10 minutes. Then we're going to come back and talk with Toby a little bit more about the video, about next steps. And so please stay tuned, check that video, and then you'll come back to more of us. We'll see you in a minute.
Hi there, my name is Toby Sillman, and I'm a senior at Brookline High School. I wanted to show this video to all of you because climate change is the most important and it's the most pressing issue of our time. But I'm not here to show you what you've already seen on the news. In fact, I wanted to show you all the great work that's being done by people in our community and what more needs to be done to address climate change.
Plant-based foods are better for the environment, but they're also better for animals, and they're kosher, they're halal, they're dairy-free, egg-free for students who are lactose intolerant or have egg allergies. When I heard that the committee was working on a sustainability policy, I wanted to get involved and help make sure that food was addressed in the policy. So I reached out to Precinct 11 town meeting member Shira Fisher, and together with my club, we drafted a couple of paragraphs about food sustainability, about serving more plant-based foods, more sustainable foods in school cafeterias, and we sent that to the school committee. And we organized students to write to school committee members, to speak to school committee members during public comment periods, and with the support of food services, what we drafted was added to the policy, and then the policy passed unanimously in October.
And what we're doing is pledging to serve 50% of our meals or menu items in the schools, in all schools in Brookline, plant-based. So we have been transitioning from using single-use disposable, whether it's plastic or compostable, and transitioning to reusable. If we don't think about the waste and think about how to make this sustainable, then it's gonna be costly. If we don't transition, we're throwing probably $150,000 to $200,000 away every year on disposables. So I think that there's gonna be a lot of work done this year, and I hope that with the support of everyone, we can get more done.
School buildings, like all buildings in Massachusetts, need heating, and these days also need cooling. And that leaves two different kinds of heat pumps. One is called air source, and the other is called ground source. So geothermal heat pumps are more expensive to build, but they cost much less to operate. If you're going to be in the building 30, 50, 80, 100 years, that lower operating cost ends up saving the community far more money in the long run. And because we have local and state climate requirements, emissions requirements, we know we cannot be burning fossil fuels in buildings after 2050. And we fully expect Pierce, a building we're building in 2025, 2026, to be operating in 2050. Lord knows it better be, right? And so we want to build this building the right way the first time, consistent with all of our requirements for the next 25 years and more. So we can't do oil or gas. It's absolutely not possible from a policy perspective. And so we could do air source or we could do ground source. Air source is cheaper up front, but the total cost is higher. Ground source is more expensive up front, but the total cost is lower. And that's why I think the town made the decision to pursue ground source heat pumps for both Driscoll and for Pierce.
Biking is very important to me. I work in downtown Boston and in parts of Cambridge, so I bike there. It's just over during the summer, but I have to bike there I feel like it's definitely safer to bike in Brookline than in Boston. It's a lot more cars in like the downtown Boston area especially. But Cambridge is definitely better. They have protected bike lanes. Like for example, along the Charles and like near Harvard and MIT, all the bike lanes are protected. So definitely much nicer biking there than in Brookline. On my way from my house to the school, I go down Beacon Street every single day. And there is a huge downhill where there is no bike lanes and you are in the same lane as the cars. So the cars are already going, I'd say like 40, 50 miles an hour and you're on a bike. So, I mean, it's very scary biking down it, but you have to do it every single day. I think it's great that the school committee sustainability task force is endorsing the bicycle advisory committee's green routes plan. I noticed that like since there's not a lot of like protected bike lanes on like these smaller roads that have a lot of like blind corners and turns and where the bikers share the same lane with the cars, there's a lot of my friends that live very, very close to the school but still get driven to school every single day, which I think is just first like very inconvenient for them because it probably takes longer by car than to bike here since you have to like start up the car and you have to get a parent to drive you. But they don't really have a choice because they don't feel safe biking in the same lane as cars.
I would love to work with the school department to help younger kids learn how to not only bike safely, but also cross the street safely, know what the right signals are, know what the right sort of pavement markings mean. I think it'd be great if we had a comprehensive educational system, maybe as part of the PE curriculum. I'd love to see the school committee take a position on student safety getting to school. We're very lucky in Brookline. I think we have one of the highest percentages of kids who get to school by means other than cars. And that's wonderful. And we don't have tons of big yellow school buses rumbling around in our streets. And that's also wonderful. And that's good for everyone. And I would love to see the school committee be more supportive of that and say that they think this is a good thing for Brookline. And then to take the next logical step, which is to support more grade separated bike lanes to allow more kids to get there safer, and slower streets to allow people that get to school in ways other than driving to get there safe. You know, I've seen people driving like idiots and putting kids trying to get to school in danger. So I'd love to see the school committee take a position to be supportive of the work that we're trying to do to slow things down, to add more grade separated and safer infrastructure for kids riding their bikes or scooting, and generally be more supportive of pedestrian infrastructure, especially near schools.
As for my work on the Transportation Subcommittee, I've worked with an amazing group of students and adults in researching electric bus grants, organizing bike buses to schools, publishing an op-ed urging students to bike rather than drive, and more. But enough about me. Let's talk about bike lanes. I'm currently standing in front of what is one of Brookline's only protected bike lanes. These bike lanes are great because they give cyclists several feet of space between oncoming traffic and themselves, and we really want to see lanes like these pop up all over the district. And that starts with school administrators, parents, and the school committee. We want them to be vocal in their support for protected bike lanes like these on streets like Greeno Street right here, Tappan Street right in front of where I'm standing, and Washington Street where there's a bike lane currently being debated, so that every school and every neighborhood in the town of Brookline can have access to a bike lane as beautiful as this one.
So of the 4 subcommittees, the focus of my committee curriculum is to really think about our direct instruction that we're having and the experiences that we're providing. So it's really trying to get that K-12, pre-K-12 sequencing, an understanding of that, how we can begin building climate and sustainability strand along with that. So there's a lot that can be done, particularly around climate change and connecting what we already teach. I think teachers do need some training and opportunities to begin to understand how their curriculum can or does already connect. So there's a little bit of a budget commitment there. We're talking about a big, complicated issue. Again, I think a lot of people are getting down from climate change. Of course, I don't think it has to be that way. I like to say that engagement and activism is the antidote to despair. When you give a young person or a person something to do to begin to address the problem, they become empowered. They begin to see themselves as powerful and impactful, and that's phenomenal for all of our social emotional well-being.
And we're back. For those who've just tuned in, who didn't see the intro, we're here with Toby Sillman, who made this unbelievable video we just watched, 10 minutes long, about sustainability in the public schools of Brookline. Toby, that was incredible. Thank you for making it and for sharing it with us. And I have so many questions. I guess the first question I have is, you made that video last summer, July, August 2024. It's February 2025. In what ways, if any, have the public schools of Brookline continued down this journey? Has any progress been made in the last 6 months?
Yeah, I'd say a great deal of progress has been made in the span of 5 or 6 months. With regard to food, the high school recently successfully transitioned from disposables to reusables. The high school now has reusable trays, reusable utensils for nearly every meal, and that's been a tremendous change, and it's really great for the food service department that they're doing that. And with regard to buildings, obviously there's the new Pierce project under construction, so that's great to see, and it'll be great to see as that progresses. And relating to transportation, this past Tuesday, the select board finally submitted their approval for the 25% design on Washington Street. So that'll be advanced to state funding, and we've still got a long ways ahead to go with that, but we've seen really great progress regarding the state of that project.
And to reiterate, Washington Street is an entree to the high school via Greeno, to Pierce School, also St. Mary's School across the street, across Harvard Street from Pierce School, of course. And then on the other end, Driscoll, right? And so Washington Street ties to a number of the public schools. Tell us about your experience. Oh, actually, you know what? I want to back up. How were those 4 topics for the video chosen, right? You sort of talked about transportation, education, food, and buildings. How did you figure out those were the 4 areas to talk about?
So the video was made, in a sense, in collaboration with the school committee's Climate and Sustainability Task Force. And that group's been around for a little more than a year and a half now. And it's got 4 subgroups. It's got food, buildings, transportation, and education, as you all saw in the video.
So you sort of reporting on, in some ways, exactly what the school committee sort of envisioned in terms of this sustainability conversation.
Right. Yeah, those are all the changes. Those are all the changes that we hope they'll eventually adopt.
Now, is this project your first at Brookline Interactive?
It was. Yeah, I had next to no experience relating to video production or directing, so it was entirely new for me.
Incredible. So surely it went exactly as planned, no surprises. You laid it all out and just nailed it, right? Or were there, in fact, things that were harder or easier or more interesting? Tell us about some of your experience, some of the things that you learned or that surprised you, not about the topic, but about creating a piece of media like this at Brookline Interactive Group.
Yeah, it was really interesting. The editing process definitely took the longest. I had to sort through hours and hours of interview footage. I had to make a few tough calls about which people to leave out, which people to highlight. So that was I would say the part I learned the most from, aside from obviously the content of the interviews themselves, which I found to be very inspiring.
And were you ever at a part in the project where you said, oh, if I had only known, I would have fill in the blank and my life would be so much easier now? Did you sort of discover you could have done things more efficiently or more cleverly? What did you learn?
This is very specific, but I realized that when it comes to trimming a video, literally the only thing you can do to cut it down is just to look at the transcript itself. Listening to the audio, it initially seems nice, but in order to really look at every single sentence in enough detail, you have to read the entire transcript, and it's a lot of work, but it certainly pays off.
And so to do the trimming instead of, I'd imagine you would just listen to the audio and sort of, oh, we'll take this piece and we'll cut out this piece. But what I hear you saying is most of that work is done in black and white.
Right. Yeah,
I don't edit my shows, so I wouldn't know.
Yeah, it's
really interesting.
Yeah, it's tricky because like with a 10-minute video, you're cramming like, I would say around 5 hours of footage into that 10-minute slot. And so every sentence matters. That's why I just have to look over it so carefully.
I imagine you might have thought to yourself, wow, that was great, but I wish you would have said that in 10 seconds instead of 45 seconds, right? Sometimes people ramble on and they zigzag, right? Was that a problem you faced, especially with guys like me?
It was interesting because there were some people who gave like 30-minute interviews, and I wanted to include like 25 of those minutes because like what they were saying was so inspiring. So yeah, it was interesting. You've got to make trade-offs. Like you can't include everything someone says. It's all a balancing act, really. But I think it worked out pretty nicely.
Yeah, I think I don't know what's on the cutting room floor, but what survived is really great. So it's out in the world. Folks are watching it. You said it's the first time you've done it. But you're in the back half of your senior year, right? So you're probably just lounging around doing nothing, maybe showing up for class once in a while, right?
I've taken advantage of being a second semester senior and not just by spending less time studying. Thankfully, I've had a good amount of time recently to show my support, especially getting Washington Street to the finish line for select board approval. So, and yeah, I would say my continued advocacy is what I hope to continue spending the most time on.
But you've got things coming up in your future, right? You've got graduation and then the summer. What is in your future? What happens next?
So this summer, I'll mostly just be hanging around Brookline, working at Glanders Bicycles, because I really like my job selling bikes there. And then in the fall, it's off to college. I will be going to Columbia, and I hope to study sustainability there and to continue my work advocating for more sustainable transportation and a more sustainable future.
I don't know. You're a Brooklyn kid. Is the Bronx really where you're ready to be? Is that going to be a big change for you?
I did live in New York City. I lived in Brooklyn until I was 12. So in a way, it'll feel like going home again.
Well, I wish you the best of luck. I'm sure you're going to do fantastic. We're so grateful
Thank you
for your work, both in clubs in Brookline High School, but also on behalf of the town on the Bicycle Advisory Committee. The video is awesome. I'm so glad we were able to show it. I'm so glad you had enough time to hang out with me for a few minutes here on TV.
Thank you so much. This was awesome.
Folks, that just about wraps it up for us. Thank you for watching another episode here on Brookline Interactive Group, and we will see you next week. Until then.
One small step